but we do have a really short time span. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Vukovic, and he's going to make us go fast.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cinda. The first thing you're going to address tonight is some resignations. We have two pairs that left. And, one went back home to York, got a teaching position. She's from there. Went back. Another individual quit as well. And we're also hiring two people. We're still going to have to hire more. So what we're doing, asking for permission tonight is step one, accept the resignations of the ones noted on the agenda, have permission to post, interview, and hire for the interview for the new vacancies, and then as well hiring two additional support staff members tonight. The one thing I'll bring up to everyone's attention, you'll see if you turn on the national news, there are some schools that are having trouble opening to start a school year for finding a lack of qualified staff. I'm assuming what's going to happen is they're going to partner with junior colleges or colleges to figure out what they could do to provide teachers. But there are some schools, even in Commonwealth, that could be down staffed, open up. We're not there in the area of teaching, but we could be there very soon, very quickly, in the area of paraprofessionals, maintenance workers, and staff. Justin, anything that I omitted that you wanted to correct or clarify for the committee?
No, we've had some positions that we needed to fill. As positions come up, we've been able to fill the spots that we have. We are right now sitting on no applications, but we've been able to fill the spots that were vacant. So we have been really fortunate that we have some really good. The ones that have applied have been really, really strong applicants. Some even with teaching certificates. So that's been great. Tonight we're looking at hiring one that does have a teaching certificate. So that's great. But yeah, we've been able to hang in there through this. So it's going okay.
Okay. Any questions?
So we've got two that are resigning. You're asking to post for those and hire two more.
Yes, ma'am.
Were the two more slots that you're filling that were vacant, or are they new positions?
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, they were spots that were vacant.
Vacant.
Yeah.
Because I know there were some vacants on them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's why I put them as separate items, because you're going to say, hey, Mike, well, you fired two. Why do you need two more?
Yeah, that's
Those
what
are
I just
vacant.
said.
Next one is employment of professional staff. In an executive session, we'll talk about filling vacancies in the area of library, ELA, school psych, and then the long-term sub, ESL. We sent that information out to you last week. As you know, that's something we'll discuss in executive session, but we want to make sure the committee and the public's aware that we'll be hopefully acting on those tonight as well. Okay. Under number two, policy updates, first readings, electronic devices. This is something we caught with our new student handbook. In our student handbook, as you know, we discussed at the academic committee meeting about the need to teach kids how to use electronic devices wisely, how to use them, appropriately. But albeit there's times where they're not allowed or should be permitted. In our policy, though, it said it was zero tolerance, strictly prohibited. So what we did is we softened the language to include the language that says the board strongly recommends the responsible use of electronic devices by students during school day in district buildings, on district property, etc. Now that mirrors our handbook. That's what we discussed with the academic committee meeting. All we're doing is changing this language to mirror the handbook language from going from zero tolerance now to the responsible use of the said devices, because they're using them already.
So that was a little bit confusing to me that first paragraph was changed, because the very next sentence says that they continue to be prohibited in locker rooms and changing areas and anything else. How's that being enforced? I mean,
Yeah, it's
That's-
tough. The reason why we prohibit them in the locker room is because we don't have to
Taking
film it.
pictures,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we strongly encourage that they address that as they're part of their class meetings at the beginning of every
Okay.
year, and remind them. It's one of those things where I hate to say it, Ms. Cinda, we won't know if we failed in an area until after the fact, and then after the fact we follow through in our code of conduct.
okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Donnie, anything you want to add to that? Because I know I asked you to look at that policy with me. Is there anything you want to revise? Did I misspeak at all?
That was perfect. I think just to add, with the policy and the handbook that we made changes with before, it was a building discretion and the principal's discretion in regards, because of the junior high, we have very limited use of cell phones. We're looking at allowing it in certain areas for PBIS possibilities. Senior high, it's a little more open. As the students get older, more mature, can handle that situation. So we wanted it to leave it a little open in the policy and in the handbook. And this is just one of the things, like Mike said, that we caught. So we just want to make sure it was consistent with each other.
913, Ms. Cinda, nothing really changed there. They're using that change in language from distribution and posting to the word dissemination. It does expand the definition of non-school materials. We did change the word nicotine to vaping products, and we did add reference to social media channels and social media policy. So very small changes there, nothing really drastic. Again, this is only the first reading, so the board has time to come back with any additional work I know I have your markups missing, then we can
Yep.
change additional ones. But this is more falling in line with the updates that PSBA recommends, as well as our own handbook and our own procedures.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Next one, extra duty and extra pay assignments. You are going to be acting upon some fall vacancies, some year-long vacancies, as well as winter and spring. Mr. Rowan did a great job, I thought, providing with all the information that you asked for according to your procedures and policies with the hiring recommendations. We will be taking action upon them tonight. Mr. Rowan's here to address any other questions that you may have. He led that project or that area. I really don't get involved in that, but I have Dan here tonight to talk about generalities. As you know, we can't talk about specific candidates in public, but he is here to address any questions about the process that you may have.
We instituted looking at social media for new staff. Should we do that for new
Coaches
staff
as well?
or coaches?
Yeah, this is what I do. So right now, number one, internally, one of our internal controls is we have a tool called Comply. Basically, what it is a warehouse system that we can put our policies in that people have to sign off that they read and understand them. But we also did is, as the recent events and concerns that I had during my vacation that were brought to my attention, we're bringing the PSE in directly to talk to the staff members to make sure the staff understands that not only from our level what we expect, but also from the people that may protect them, so they understand very clearly that there are some things that you cannot be protected from and what the difference is between free speech and inappropriate action. So we are working with staff on that. We need to do that with our coaches as well. Dan had his coaches meeting on August 7th. I asked him to bring some of that up in generalities because according to our board policy, they really can't create their own social media channels without some board discussion. So Dan, do you want to just debrief the board on what transpired at that meeting?
Yeah, essentially, just addressing all the coaches, asking if they have their own personal Twitter accounts, things like that, social media accounts, and just basically kind of setting up guidelines for those as to what we want to post, retweeting things that the athletic department is doing, really just honoring their program and expanding that, watching the use of likes that they do on certain things because that can show up in social media as well. I think it went well. Everyone understood exactly what we were kind of getting to, and really just kind of expanding the brand of ISD as well.
But I'm talking about before we hire, how we do that with hiring our staff. Are we checking?
Oh, yes. I think
And Dan, you were involved in any of that discussion a couple of years ago when we decided to do that with hiring new staff like teachers or custodians or whoever. And I wonder if we ought to expand that to.
that's worthy of a conversation. Yeah, what we've done is after the fact, after how to behave, how to act, how to.
Right. And that's important
Yep.
too. Don't get me wrong. That's great.
But that's something we need to control for because our my opinion, I'm not speaking for the board. When you're hired here, you're hired as a role model, but your hat as a teacher or administrator is never really off, right? I don't get that luxury. We're always on stage,
Right.
and I think it's important. I think that's what you're getting at,
Yeah.
right?
That goes for coaches too.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely important. So I think that's something we can work on. Are you okay with that, Mr. Rouse?
Absolutely, yeah, I'm glad to.
If I could, I know before we hired, I always had our HR director look for their Facebooks before. And we didn't even interview some of them after I seen their Facebook pages.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know if it's legal to ask them on their application for the Facebook information. But sometimes if you can get back and look on it, we had to search someone to find them, but
Yeah.
you'd be surprised some of them you don't want to interview after you see what they post.
Well, and there's a whole bunch of things to look for, right? There's one of the, I was a knucklehead in college, did something really silly. But then there's also the one I think now, you have to be careful about your own political views, what you push out there and what you say and what you don't say. Because our job is not to tell kids what to think. Our job is to help kids to think. And I think we have to be mindful of that. And that's why we brought in the PSEA as well to help us with that, because I think that's important to do. And hopefully they'll reiterate a lot of the work that we did, because they do sign off on that every year that they read and understand the policy. And this will help reiterate that too. So. Okay. Lastly, we have Mr. Edmondson here. Mr. Edmondson, as you know, part of his duties, Horace Mann principal, is also overseeing ESL program, English as Second Language, and our IDEAL program. Kevin's done a remarkable job in the way of IDEAL, but the one thing we wanted to do is create a handbook similar to what we did with the student handbook. So Kevin, I think you're here. So Kevin, it's one of those days, right?
It's bright orange shirt.
Right, yeah. Just
Yes.
So Kevin, if you can give them a little bit of background so they understand what exactly they're looking at We're not going to board vote tonight, Ms. Cinda, because we could just wait till August 22nd. But I did at least want to have the opportunity to talk to you about it, what he included in there, the why behind it, and then we have some time to refix it if we need to.
Yes, thank you, sir. And it's very similar to last year. Mr. Johnson and myself worked on it. We got rid of the Ideal Plus language, just to remind everybody, 6th to 12th grade, that synchronous Ideal Plus is no longer there. It's the asynchronous Edgenuity platform. We're still gonna have the tier 3 system on how we decide whether the kids are staying full Ideal, partial full Ideal, coming to the Ideal lab, or fully coming back to the school. It's a 3-tiered system.
Kevin, if I can interject
sure.
real quick.
Yeah.
The reason why we did that committee is we saw people floundering. As you know, I'm not a fan of cyber schools. I think they're flawed. I think they're inherently broken, and I think it's one of the worst laws out in the PA code. However, they are a public school, and kids have the choice to be there. What we found were kids were floundering and getting lost in between connections and connect points. So we embedded tiered levels of support to make sure that kids are not getting lost and that we're not finding out to the last minute, like, oh my goodness, it's May, Cinda's not graduating. Correct?
Yeah.
Did I explain that correctly?
No, yeah, yes,
Okay.
sir. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm still your seat. Yeah, 1 second. Yes, absolutely right, sir. So like that tier 1, same thing everyone's getting, right? All our teachers are checking in, making sure kids are getting what they need to get done. Mrs. Nybert, who's a great resource at the high school. She works in the Ideal Lab, does a great job communicating with teachers, kids, and families. So if they're on pace to get their courses and to do well at their core studies, they stay at tier 1. If we see they're falling behind or grades are not there, they go to tier 2. That's when we up the communication with the teacher that they're working with. Ms. Nyberg communicates with them, sends emails out to families. I get out there and communicate. We've even done home visits where we're knocking on doors with the kids. Hey, how can we better serve you? What can we do to better help you? To continue that communication with them. Once they get to tier, and at the tier 2, like, because we have that great lab there. So at that point, if they get to tier 2, they're falling a little behind. We give them the opportunity, hey, 2 days a week, come to the lab. 1 day we come to the lab. So you're getting that face-to-face interaction with who they need to speak with. If they get to that tier 3, that's where, like, okay, like we've done X, Y, and Z. Now we need you to come back. Like, you really need to give us reasons why you're not coming back, because the bottom line is we want you to graduate. We want you to get your credits. So that tier 3 is when, like, you need to come back to school.
This is only for our cyber kids.
Yes, sir.
We're not doing it for the others.
Correct.
This is strictly our, sir. Yes, strictly our.
This started when Miss Savagian was here, and she was right. Kids were, I don't want to say fall through the crack. I mean, I don't know what the right terminology. We were missing kids, and we were concerned about their lack of engagement, their lack of involvement, and we just weren't okay with it anymore. And so we started, when Kevin took over the role, started doing more house visits, do home visits, and put up a tiered structure of support, because kids, again, that's probably bad to say, lost through the crack, because it was the system's fault, not anyone's fault, but we had to quickly address that because they just weren't. You saw them running, flipping between coming to school, cyber school, or an outside cyber, and there's this evil rotation that we wanted. It was a bad rotation that we wanted to stop to make sure kids were held accountable, not in a punitive way, but in a way of, look, you got to get moving, and we got to help you, and here's how we can help you, because it's not working what you're doing.
Well, I mean, it makes sense that we don't wait until the last grades are in to tell them they didn't graduate.
No, sir.
Okay, so you can pick things up in 9th grade or 7th grade, and you can start intervening and get them on track, either as cyber or in their buildings, but also that they're still our kids. Okay.
So if they get to tier 3, can we make them come back?
Yes.
We have that authority?
We revoke our right to put them on there, because we just basically look at it. I don't use Dr. Schaefer's medical terms, but we look at it like it's almost called malpractice, right? Like, we're not doing what's right for you and your best interest, and you're not being successful.
But they
So
can
if
shoot,
they come back, they can come to regular classes, or they come to do the lab?
The lab, yes.
So they
Yep.
don't,
Oh,
that would be the next step?
Yep.
If they still.
Once you get to
continue-
tier 3, it's you have to come back. It's either you're coming back to the regular classroom setting or inside that lab full time.
Or
Yes.
a combination of both. Come back for the lab, and we ease you back into regular day, because sometimes shocking the system, just put
Yeah.
them back to 8-period day, is almost counterproductive as well, because a lot of these kids have not been successful in traditional school. Now, that's not everyone, right? So I don't want to paint a broad stroke, but it depends on the kid, and that's where they have to use their discernment with that and the guidance counselors to figure out what the best
but
path.
they could, at that point, they could also choose to go to an outside
They
cyber
can.
school. No, they're going to come back.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you give them the list to where they're going to go.
And we've been digging our heels in that. We haven't had it happen a lot, sir, and I hope it doesn't, but as sooner or later that we dig our heels into the point, you're just not being successful. And it's hurting you, and so we take a hard position on that.
Yeah.
But that's after multiple interventions,
But you're
and
doing that
multiple
early.
attempts.
If they're having trouble in 5th grade, you're intervening at that point.
we don't see the middle school, I mean, I don't want to speak
Yeah,
to it,
middle
but
school's not as
middle
bad. The
school
high
and
school-
below, it's high
Yeah.
schools where, yeah.
But you're still monitoring.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you can, if a kid starts to get off track, you can bump him back on track
Yeah.
through all these interventions.
And we have great communication with it, like parents, great relationship with the parents, and they'll even say, look, let's try this. You know, we get like that 2-week frame. Let's try it for 2 weeks. Let's see how they do. And then we'll come back together, have another conference to see if this is working or not.
When my kids were here, it seemed like it was, you got a letter sometime in June that you weren't graduating.
Yeah.
It just seemed like that was
Yes.
the care.
Yeah.
And that doesn't do you any good at all.
Yeah.
Save the postage.
And that's
Yeah.
what Krista brought up before she left, and Kevin, we signed it, Kevin, we need to start looking a little bit deeper into that and trying to fix some of those gaps, because we think they are right, justifiable. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they have like 2-week intervals. Like Miss Nybert's really good with that. The teacher's really good with that. They have like 2-week intervals, and they get like, you know, they get letters, emails, notifications. So we're not waiting until a week before that report comes out saying you're not going to pass this quarter. We do not want that to happen. So we're constantly communicating throughout the quarter and semester.
That's good. It's taking Mr. Heinrich's relentless support or whatever he calls it
Mhm.
and making it
Oh yeah.
school-wide, not just for kids in the classroom, not just for summer school kids, but for ideal kids
Yep.
too. And that's good.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yep.
And that's all I have, Miss Cindy. Well done.
It's that record time.
Well done, Miss Cindy. That's all I'm saying.
I really
Get
think
Miss
that's enough for me.
get Miss in a sticker.
Yeah.
Any questions for us, Miss Cindy, while we're here?
I'm good.
All right. Jared, do you mind if we just end the meeting? We'll hang out for a little bit until the exec session starts.